Right, welcome to the Rural Ed Leaders Podcast, where we explore the unique opportunities, challenges, and research shaping successful rural education leadership. We're your hosts, Dr. Michelle Reinhart.
Dr. Bradley Carpenter.
And we're so glad that you're here to learn from uplifting stories, practical strategies, and insightful discussions that will equip and empower you as a rural ed leader.
I am so excited today to introduce our audience to Dr. Christopher Bailey. I consider him a friend and a professional colleague. He's the Superintendent of Goldthwaite ISD, bringing nearly 2 decades of experience to Texas public schools. Prior to his role, he was the Director of Student Supports and Clack Middle School Principal in Abilene ISD, where he championed initiatives that remove barriers to learning, foster positive student outcomes through student behavior. And he began his career in KDISD. I've forgotten about this, as a high school band director. No pressure there. I know those big school districts and band director, band boosters. And he served as an assistant principal. He holds a doctorate in educational leadership from Baylor University, and impressively was honored as the 2022 Principal of the Year by the Texas Association of Secondary School Principals. So, Dr. Bailey, thank you for being with us. It's good to see you again.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, so glad to have you here. I'm going to start us off with our first question. So first of all, for our listeners who might be from outside of Texas or like from a different part of Texas, Goldthwaite is a smaller rural district here in Texas. Some of the other districts you mentioned, Bradley, Abilene, and Katy ISD are large urban and or suburban districts here in Texas. And so Chris, start us off a little bit by talking to us about that transition, right? Going from big districts, ending up now in the superintendency seat, leading in a rural community. Sometimes rural communities can be skeptical about leaders transitioning from larger districts, right? Kind of worried about, are they going to be too big district for us? Right. Will it really be a good fit here? So talk to us a little bit about, your experience with that and what advice you might have for our rural ed leader listeners and or rural school boards or communities that are navigating that culture shift of having a leader come in from a bigger context.
Thanks for that, and again, thanks for letting me be here and preaching the good word about Goldthwaite America. It is a wonderful place to be for sure. And the reality is, like you just said, Bradley, I started in a school district at the time at 43,000 students. Now is over 96,000 students, and a band program that was nearly the size of the district that I run now.
Right.
And so I quite frankly never envisioned working in a rural district. And my board knows this. Everybody I've talked to in Goldthwaite knows this. That literally the only reason that I applied there is because it was closer to Waco, where my son is attending Baylor.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and so it was the only job I've applied for in the superintendency, and I thought it'd be a good start to start thinking about that role. And as I've told my board, I applied for the job because of the proximity to Waco. I took the job because I fell in love with the community and the people. Mm-hmm. And that's really it. When it comes down to it, is it's a people business, no matter if there are 100,000 kids or 540 like we have. Mm-hmm. It really is a people business, and knowing the people and knowing the culture within the community is really the base level. I think that the comfort level with the board and that decision making certainly was not because I was from larger districts. It was, I think, because I did a lot of research and I did a lot of investing in time to know that this was a community not just where I could lead and serve, but where my family could be successful and they could grow up in a town that I thought that they deserved to be in as well. And so, at the end of the day, that's really that's really it. I think it's about people, and if that community knows that you are invested in the people and the students, certainly in the community, I think that makes all the difference in the world. Specifically in Goldthwaite, there's this kind of, I call it an on-running joke. I think it's just life for them. You're either from Goldthwaite or you're a move-in, and it doesn't matter if you've lived there for 40 years. You're a move-in,
right?
And they take pride in that.
Yeah.
This town that was established back in the mid 19th century, and there are families, many families, who have been there since then, and they take pride in that, and they want to know that the move-ins are going to take pride in that community. And there are, literally hundreds of move-ins that do so. And although we're a 1-year move-in, it has been a great time to get to know that place, just like you, Bradley, that I've driven through dozens, hundreds of times, and never went down the hill into really learning about the community. And that's what it's about, is just learning and growing within the population, for sure.
I think Michelle and I can both speak. I mean, I'm from Belton, Texas, 6th generation Beltonian, and I think Belton, it's so large. I mean, it's not huge, but it's now got 2 6A high schools. But when I was growing up, it was like, you're from Belton or you moved into Belton. And there's so many amazing things about small communities. And I just wanted to give you 30 seconds to a minute to tell us, what about the community of Goldthwaite do you love, so that when people hear this podcast, we got to hear about Henrietta, we got to hear about Marlin. What is it about Goldthwaite that really people fall in love with?
Yeah. I'll tell you what I fell in love with, and this probably is going to sound cliche, and it really isn't. And quite frankly, until I really did my research, I thought it was cliche. It really is that the community supports the schools. The community is all about the school. And let me give you a real life example. So it's the day before my first interview there, and I'm actually heading to Waco to see my son perform with the Baylor University symphonic band. And I thought, I've got time. I'm going to pop off. There's a basketball game in San Saba, which is the arch rival. You don't wear purple and gold.
Right.
And so I thought I'll run through there. It's about 30 minutes out of the way, but I'll go there. I'll watch a couple of games and then I'll head over, so I can get a little reconnaissance, so to speak. And Michelle, Bradley, I got there at 4:30 in the afternoon. The JV girls basketball team is playing. There are probably 8 to 10 fans on the home side, and the visitor side at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon is packed.
That's incredible.
Like, I'm saying packed, and overflow into like the glass area in the end zone of the basketball arena. So I sit on the home side because it's the only place to sit. And I mean to tell you, for the next 3 hours, nobody got up.
That's cool.
I mean, there's no way that all of those people that were there were directly connected to a student on that group.
Right.
They showed up for their kids, and that was, of all things, the most impressive thing that I've seen. And time after time after time again over the last 14 months since I've been in town, that continues to happen. It's packed everywhere we go. It's packed on the road. When at 9 o'clock in the morning for the 3,200 meter state run this morning, there was more cheer in the stands for Goldthwaite America than there was for anyone else.
That's really cool.
And it just continues to happen all over the place. And that's not just in sports. It's really within the entire culture of the community. And that in a microcosm really is Goldthwaite.
That's fantastic.
I love that. And what I love about that too is, we often talk about the limited resources that rural districts face, and that therefore rural ed leaders face leading in those contexts. And I am not going to minimize that to any degree, right? Like, that is absolutely true. But what you're highlighting here too, Chris, is some of these other strengths and unique opportunities and other value adds that truly exist in rural communities that are different, right, than in urban areas. I remember when in one of my doctoral classes, and it was a very kind of large school, urban-centric program that I went through, and we were talking about some kind of initiative that we're, planning or thinking about. How would you do that within a school? How would you, get 30 people to come help with this particular thing or whatnot? And I'm like, you would text 2 people and tell them to phone their friends, and everyone would show up with whatever they need done, right? Like, there's just that kind of collective, what do the schools need? Oh, you need people to come help install a playground. You need people to come paint something. You need to come do like a big clean out day. You need meals and treats delivered for Teacher Appreciation Week next week. Just let me know what you need, and we'll find ways to get it done. And that's this other kind of capital, if you will, right, that exists in rural communities that until you experience it,
Right.
you may not know that that's even a thing. And then if you've been in rural, you may not realize that it's not that way everywhere else, right? So,
That's right.
yeah, that's fascinating.
Now, I think, one of the things we're trying to do with this podcast, Chris, is to show the appreciative side of rural. Because there's a narrative out there that rural is less than, or rural is podunk, or rural, whatever terminology you want to add to it. And so outside of even like the community support, what do you see as the strengths of like rural school districts instructionally or innovative wise? Like, what are you doing in the district that you would be proud to share with any school district in the state?
Yeah, a couple of things there. And just going back a little bit to Michelle's comment, if there's any advice I could give to a rural educator, really any educator, any leader, it would be this. And it went through a shift of my own thought process to get to here, but it really is a word shift on the surface, but it's really a mind shift, really a thought process shift, to go from the idea of limited resources, and I really have taken that out of my vernacular altogether, shifting the words from limited resources to unique challenges, and saying, yes, we may not have the same funding that this group has, but we have, like you just said, Michelle, we have the grit and the wherewithal within the community to make that happen.
Right.
I thought one of the craziest things when I got to town, I said, where are the baseball and softball fields? Well, they're the city fields. What do you mean they're the city fields? Well, the city kind of owns them, but we maintain them, and
We kind of have this relationship on this, and yeah.
All right, that's cool. Well, and then this other event, the board elections were happening in May. Well, where does that happen? The Civic Center. Oh, is that like a city gathering place? Well, the city kind of owns it, but we did the renovation. We really own it, and we keep the insurance and the utility. Okay, and so it really is this like kind of collaborative event. At one point I was like, well, who owns the schools?
We do own those, right? Is that how that works? Right.
But it really is that unique challenge of how do we gather whatever resources we have and make sure that we use them to the very best way we can. And I don't think that's different in large districts. It just is unique. It's a different place. Academically, there's no question in my mind that the biggest benefit is class size. It is the ability to get one-on-one with a kid, to get two-on-one with a kid. Goldthwaite in specific has really invested in small class sizes from the beginning. Sometimes there's a misnomer that if you have less kids, that means that you always have less class size. Well, that's not always the case, right?
Right.
But they really have. So we have classrooms that at the elementary that have 11 to 14 kids in them. And that one-on-one attention, not just with a student, but with a parent, is just, I just don't think you can get that anywhere else. A quick story around that. My own kid, this is October, and we're still, schlepping back to Abilene for medical appointments and that kind of thing. I get him out of school for his pediatrician appointment, and they had just gone over long division in 4th grade, and he's in the back seat kind of doing his work, and I was like, that's impressive that he's actually doing his work. We're on our way to get more ADHD medicine. But anyway, so he finishes it up. I was like, how was it, bud? He's like, it was not bad. And then that was kind of it. And then he says 3 or 4 minutes later, just out of the blue, I really like how much attention my teacher pays to me here.
Wow.
I said, what do you mean by that? He says, and y'all, out of the mouth of babes.
Correct.
He says, in my classroom of 14, I feel like I'm not just in a big class of 27 like I was in Abilene.
Wow.
And I was like, why does that matter? He said, well, because when the teacher says to do something, they don't just tell me to do it. They actually come back and ask me if I did it.
Wow.
And so profound, right? That like a 4th grader, a 10-year-old, can see the value in a small school environment and a small class environment, and that I think has paid huge dividends for our kids preparing. And the last thing I'm going to say, and I just have to say this part of it that is so cool to me. Like you said, Bradley, sometimes the perception is that rural is like out there,
Right.
Rural is out there where we never go. And the reality is our students are competing in the exact same workforce, the exact same college applications, the exact same career advancement as every other student, every other child. And so we've got to prepare for that.
That's right.
Many students that grow up to be adults, that grow up to be successful people, end up coming back to Goldthwaite, and they love that, they want to do that. And others don't, and they fly the coop just like some of us did. And I feel like it is imperative on us. It is absolutely our obligation to make sure that regardless of what they decide to do next, that they're prepared for that. It is a global society, whether we like it or not. And so we've got to make sure we're preparing our kids for that. And I honestly don't think any place does it better than Goldthwaite.
I love that. And it's such a great example of symmetry between what happens in a rural district and what we're trying to do in this podcast as well about equipping and empowering, right? Our rural schools absolutely can and do equip, empower our children to be successful in what comes next. And this podcast is all about equipping and empowering rural education leaders in that same kind of way. I'm going to kind of dig deeper into the community engagement part because again, if you've been in a rural community, you often take this for granted, right? But also like that level of support from the Goldthwaite community doesn't just happen, right? Like, and again, in many ways, it's common across rural communities, but even in rural communities, then the support can begin to fall off or there can be a fissure or whatnot. So, talk to us a little bit about how rural ed leaders can either intentionally build authentic connections or sustain those connections, right? What are some of the things that really help keep the district and the community tied together in these really positively reinforcing ways? What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and I'll hit it first from the philosophical side, but I really do want to get to a practical side because it is one of the goals that we've had this year. The philosophical side is literally, I mean, it's this simple: show up, right? Like, show up, and be present physically, but intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. It's a wonderful faith base in Goldthwaite and in a lot of our rural communities, and we have to be able to show up for our community to see that it's important to us that my family, that our school leaders want to be invested in our community. And so I think that my first 90 days in Goldthwaite, and this is not braggadocious. It just literally is the example of showing up. I probably had about 120 different meetings with different organizations in town, one-on-one. Asked the board for 3 people to go have coffee with, and so right there at the top is 21 different faces to get to have conversations with, and then kid events. I'm like that old band director in me. I played drums at the Fields of Faith, rally in the stadium. That was the best day of the entire year. Still the best day of the entire year.
Let's go.
Just literally just showing up is half the battle. And then the other thing practically, and this was an area that we focused on. The board said at the beginning that they wanted to focus on is having better communication, and that was it. That's what they said. We just want better communication. Well, what does that look like, right? I mean, it's hard to know, and so what we did, the administrative team and I and the board, we created a multi-layer communication plan, wrote it out. It's here on paper that every week that the campus principal is going to send something to their staff and to their parents. And every week I'm going to send something to the district on Monday morning. It's more motivational, but it's something where they get to read my words or not. And then and every Friday I send what's called Eagle board notes to the board. And so all of our different departments, and that doesn't mean different people in each of those departments, because in rural communities we all serve multiple hats, right? But each department reports out on, and it's a very simple Google form or Google sheet that they just fill in their block about what's going on. It's intended to be information that the board can share at the coffee house. And so it goes in, I send it out. In fact, I haven't done it today yet, but I will this afternoon. Send it out, and then they have that information to be able to share again at the coffee shop, at the at church, or wherever they may be in town. And then the last thing is, whether we like it or not, our social media presence is it has to tell our story. If we don't, somebody else is going to. And one of the things that I noticed whenever I was researching for this job is we were great in Goldthwaite about telling the story of our athletic programs, which are a cornerstone of our success in Goldthwaite and a very important part of it. There was not over the course of 2 years, I look back that far on Facebook, there was not a single picture of a student in a classroom. And I said this in the interview process, and then in the second round, a couple of the board members challenged me on that and said, "You know what? I thought you were a liar." And I went back and looked, and sure enough, there wasn't a single picture. And so we've made a concerted effort this year to tell the story instructionally, academically, in the classroom on campus and in the classroom off campus, which is what we call our athletic facilities. And so that's been a huge success, because the day that something bad happens, which it's going to happen, right?
Sure.
It's a human business. We're gonna struggle sometimes, and there's going to be some malcontent sometimes. And when we deal with that, we need people to give us a little grace and know that there's really great things going on when that one little blip on the radar happens.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love how practical, really got into with that and helped see that, like, this isn't, we need to have this 20-page plan and convene all these stakeholders. We're like, it can be as simple as this, and this. Like, we have a Google Sheet where we're dumping stuff in and then putting it out. But I also love to, like, super practical ideas you gave us about how to do that in practice. But I also love how well aligned each of those strategies is to a specific purpose, right? Yeah. So, like, I already wrote mine down. It's going to be Buck board notes. Thank you very much for the Alpine Bucks here. But, like, this idea of, like, the board notes is to equip the school board with positive talking points.
And Magoos.
Right, to spread in town, right, about, like, what's going on a weekly basis, because, they are going to get oh, I'm concerned about such and such. Oh, yeah, okay, got it. Well, I'll move that up the chain or whatnot. And did you know about this, and this, right? Yeah. And then, like, how y'all were thinking about your social media, about it's a little bit imbalanced towards our extracurriculars. How can we show the great things happening between 8 and 3:45 every day? Yeah. Has that purpose of showcasing the amazing things that were already happening. It's not like that they weren't happening, but they weren't being celebrated and really showcased in a way that parents didn't have and community didn't have access to otherwise, right? So I just love that intentionality. It's not about, like, we're going to do this, and this to do it. There's this really tight alignment between what the strategy is and what we're trying to accomplish with it.
Those end goals. I'm going to do a hard cut right here with Bobby. How are we on time, Chris? Because I know you got track stuff.
Good.
We're good? Okay.
I'm good.
I just want to make sure. All right. I'm really interested in two parts of mentorship. One, I want to hear about some of the people that you've looked up to that have helped you get to this place in your life, and we could celebrate them online and promote them as well in their work. But also, as a new superintendent, what strategies are you using to continue to procure mentorship for yourself, and how has that been important in your first year as a superintendent?
Yeah. Obviously this job is, and Michelle can attest to this, this job is totally different than any other job I ever had, and quite frankly, that I imagined it would be. And there is just an incredible steep learning curve. And again, I'm only 14 months into this. I don't know what percentage of it is, but it's probably a fairly low percentage of the amount of the job that I actually know yet. And so being able to rely on a lot of people is really important. And I will give a huge plug, and it's not really a plug. It's really a testament to TASA, Texas Association of School Administrators, for those who are outside of Texas, for what they do to support superintendents and really all school leadership, but certainly superintendents. It's incredible. It really is. And so Jill Seiler, who runs the professional learning part of it, does an incredible job with the First Time Superintendents Academy. Charles Dupree runs a mentoring section of that, where Karen Rue, I think one of the best business, is my executive coach. My mentor was my superintendent in Abilene, David Young. And then, the godfather of superintendency, Alton Fraley, who I got to work with in Katy, is literally a phone call or a text away always, know, and if I've been impressed about anything in this work, it's been that I've not come across a single other superintendent, either currently serving or retired, that doesn't pick up the phone that doesn't answer the email right away. And these people who are incredibly well respected in their jobs and have these legendary careers, who are as down to earth as it gets to say, I know where you're at. I mean, there are hard days in this job. There's no question. And there's just no one else in town who will understand that. And because it's just a different job. It's not, in my opinion, very humble opinion, it's no more important job than any other job in town. It's just a different job.
Yeah.
And so we've got, I have made it my work in terms of personal self-development to reach out to those people and stay connected with them often. So if I had any recommendation for anyone, it would be to get involved in your local organization, in your state organization, to see what resources are available and then leverage them. Thankfully, I have a board who cares about that, who has given me the time to go do those things, who's given me the resources to go do those things. And it's vitally important, because if you're not taking care of your own professional work, how in the world are you getting others to do that work? And so those are some of the people that have helped me this year. And again, back to TASA, the conference work that they do throughout the year is kind of the big moments, but it's the stuff they do under the radar, the words of encouragement. Jill, I don't know how she does this. I mean, there are 1,200-ish superintendents in Texas, but every 3 or 4 weeks or so, she sends a text that says, "Hey, I loved what you put on Facebook. That was
really cool.
How in the world does she do that?"
Yeah.
And that's the attention to detail that our state organization is running over there with. And so
that's important.
I would encourage everyone to get involved in that work in their state for sure.
Jill's a friend of the pod.
Absolutely incredible work that she does. And I love how you're highlighting too the nature of the superintendency in order to be successful, not for success itself, right? But for our children, right? We are trying to lead transformation and continued excellence for the children of our community. In order to do that, you cannot do that alone in this role, right? It is not I'm going to close my classroom door and work my tail off, and I can just, right? There, especially in rural districts where you could spend all day, every day just doing TEA compliance nonsense,
for sure,
right? That doesn't move the needle forward. You have got to build those kind of relationships where you can call and be like, okay, we've got this thing we need to do, by Thursday for the state or whatnot. Help me walk through this in 15 minutes so I'm not spending 6 hours reading through a manual on something, right? That isn't moving the needle. How can I do this task in this amount of time and do it well, right? Sure. So that I can really focus my time on what matters more. And that is so incredibly important in the rural superintendency. And so I'm with you about, like, in this role more than any other role, that collaborative nature is so important in order for us to thrive. I love you raising that. Okay, I'm going to kind of
say one more thing about that real quick.
Absolutely.
If you don't mind. I'll keep it short, but
you're good.
I would assume that there are others that are non-superintendents listening to this podcast, and if you're an aspiring superintendent, I would give the same advice as I just did, but also B, whatever superintendents are around you, just hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee and sit for an hour? I suspect that not a single one would say no.
Right.
And so take that time, and even if you don't have it, write 3 questions down. Trust me. I mean, as I'm exhibiting here, superintendents like to talk. you could take 3 questions and you could spend 3 hours at the coffee shop. You just got to give one and they're going to go.
Right.
So go eat it up and soak it in so that you have some perspective before you go into that application and interview process.
I got to shout out, I know you have a question, Michelle. I got to shout out my former mentor, rest in peace, Dr. Jay Scribner. He's like a $5 cup of coffee and 20-minute ask is the best investment you'll make. And that used to be a class assignment for me. It will be, you have to invite 3 people that you look up to for coffee this semester and get to know them and listen and ask some good questions. I love that you brought that up, Chris.
And so, such a great practical strategy, and one that, when I was a teacher, even when I was a district leader, I was like, I didn't know if I could do that. Right. I don't know if I would dare. Right. Can you do that? Will they say, aren't they busy? Of course they're busy. And they would gladly take you up on that and pour into your leadership as well. I love that. Okay. So kind of along this theme of, time well spent and the role of rural ed leaders never being done, right? There's never enough time in the day. Chris, talk to us a little bit about how you don't get bogged down in operations. And I know it happens, right? But it can be super easy to get into those, I'm not leading, I'm managing pieces of the role, right? How do you intentionally lead rather than manage? When you're doing this well, what does it look like? And I'm sure you, like me, get sucked into okay, I am deep in the weeds of something that I don't have any business being in or that I need to wrap up so I can get back to the work of leading. But what does it look like when you feel like you're doing a great job on that balance?
Yeah. One of the epiphanies that I realized maybe 3 or 4 months into this thing is, and you mentioned the kind of the TEA compliance road. I mean, the reality is in Goldthwaite, Texas, there are no less documents that have to be submitted to TEA than in Katy, Texas, right?
That's correct.
500 kids, the same number of submit buttons as 100,000 kids.
Exactly right.
The difference is I have 2 other administrators and an executive assistant in my office, where others may have more. And I get it. There's scale there, and I'm not saying that anyone else's work is not important. But there is all of that administrivia, so to speak, that has to be completed. And the reality is, there are not enough hours in the day, and so it can get we can get bogged down in that if we've not empowered others to do that, or just see the empowerment of others. It's not like I have to go ordain somebody to do great work. We've got to see great work in people and feed into that. And thank the Lord that I walked into a situation where there were incredible people in my office, principals at the schools, although we hired a brand new high school principal when I first got there, which she's doing amazing work as well. It is a really a great group of people that are doing great work. And like I said earlier, everyone wears multiple hats. Every person wears multiple hats, and we have to rely on that to happen. And the other kind of secret weapon that I've learned about this year that I didn't quite really understand in larger school districts is the Region Service Center. The Region 12 Service Center is I would call it better than any that I've worked in.
That's great.
In fact, I've got a text sitting right here from Mark Parsons at Region 12.
I know Mark.
He's helping out with something.
Yeah.
And the quality of the Region Service Center in Waco and Region 12 is off the charts, in my opinion. And the service they provide in so many different areas, to be able to take some of that work off the back of our principals, or off the back of our central office team, and off the back of me, or to say, hey, you don't know that you need to do this, but you need to do this. And then a month later say, hey, you need to do this next week. And then, hey, you haven't done this, Let
me walk you through it. Yeah, let's get this across the finish line. Yep.
Exactly. That I didn't even know existed. And that has been something that's been really great. And so pro tip number 2 in terms of reaching out to your support group is get involved with your service center and know those people so that they'll pick up the phone and help. We were going through teacher incentive allotment application year this year. We and got that going because we feel like that's part of the funding formula that will help our teachers. And the service center was just off the charts with helping us with that. And so, and there are multiple other ways that happens. I can't remember what the question was, but other than
but I think you nailed it, because we're talking about like, how do you balance managing and leading?
Oh, yeah.
But what you're showing too is like, not every management task needs to sit on or cross your desk, right?
Absolutely.
And also doesn't need to sit on or cross the desk of one of your other people who are doing 10,000 things. Like, you're thinking, it sounds like you're thinking super strategically about like, there really is this whole ecosystem design that can support rural schools, like our service centers, like our state agencies, like our state organizations, if we but use those resources well, right?
Absolutely.
And if we kind of are intentional and also set the ego aside about like, I don't have to be the one that fills this out or whatnot, or I don't have to know the ins and outs of every single piece. I need to know somebody who does. So I just love how you're thinking about part of that work of making more time for leadership is being intentional about what you outsource from a management side, particularly for, like you're saying, many of those submit buttons that are a state requirement but aren't actually improving outcomes for kids.
Yeah.
Chris, I want to ask you, get into the nitty gritty about, we talked to several of our superintendents about time management, life balance, and there may not be a balance. I mean, the person we talked to, Dr. Henson and Marlon's like, if you got into this for work-life balance,
that ain't it.
This may not be the job for you. But just on a personal level, how have you adjusted to these are practical tips to either aspiring or current superintendents. What are the tools that you use to manage your time so that you feel you can realize your best self as a leader throughout the week?
Yeah. Wow. That's a good question. No, there are some intentional things, but I would say in that idea of work-life balance, I not just getting into this job, this one has exacerbated that thought, but I really think that's a myth, right? Like that there's some kind of scale that we kind of try to figure that out. I think it's a myth, like a state of happiness is a myth. Like, there's not going to be times where we're not sad, mad, or scared, right? We can be happy, but happiness isn't always going to happen. Being at work, 24/7 obviously can't happen. Back to Charles Dupree, I think one of the most profound things that I heard him say during first time at Superintendent's Academy is, if you die in that chair, on day 1, the entire town will grieve you. On day 2, they will set a meeting, and on day 3, there will be somebody in your chair. Your family, your friends, the people that love you will grieve you the rest of their lives. Don't die in that chair. And I get it. We really can work ourselves into health related issues if we allow ourselves to. So we have to be intentional about finding whatever that release is. And it may be setting a hard deadline in the afternoon on 2 days a week to say, I'm finished at 5 o'clock.
Right.
Or it may be, and what I've done is I've taken up golf. And so I try, and I've not been very successful the last couple of weeks. I try at least once a week to go hit balls at some level. And I'm not good at it. I don't claim to be. Thankfully, my college kid has kind of gotten into it, so I have a buddy to go with, and sometimes it's a little bit of a business opportunity as well to do some business with community members. But it's a time where mostly I just go by myself, and it's a time for me to think and relax and just enjoy the time. And so that may be music for other people. It may be travel, whatever it is. I think finding something that you're going to commit yourself to kind of replenishing your soul, replenishing your spirit is important. I think, and I'm kind of on the front end of this. I've let my health journey kind of relax over the years, and over the last couple of months, I've really dug back into that. We've got to take care of our bodies. I'll not too prideful to share. When I started this job, I was taking 1 acid reflux pill a day. I'm up to 7 pills a day, with blood pressure and
it's reality,
cholesterol and all of this stuff that I'm like, I've got to figure out a way to do better with my health so that the stress that is going to be there. This is a stressful job. This will never be not a stressful job. That my body can withstand that.
Right.
Yeah, we think, when I talk about well-being in some of my research, if we think we have a light to share with others, if we have a gift for leadership, if we feel like we add value to a community, we then have a responsibility to take care of our bodies.
Bingo.
One, because, we add value to where we're at, but two, we need to model to the people that work for us and the students that go to our schools of what a healthy person looks like. It's not healthy to have an unhealthy, it's not good for the district to have an unhealthy high school principal, an unhealthy school counselor. So if we're not modeling that as the top leader in the district, that we can do a great job and we can take care of ourselves, then we're not realizing our potential as school leaders.
So good. I mean, you're describing it as like it's actually part of the job.
Absolutely.
Versus oftentimes we'll talk about health or well-being as like, okay, when I catch up.
As a selfish endeavor.
When things slow down just a little bit after I get past this next thing or graduation or this or that. And I remember I tell my husband, like, man, it's just a busy season right now. And once we get through the season, and one day he's like, you have got to stop lying to yourself.
When is the busy season?
Because every season is a busy season in this job,
That's
right? And so you're describing, this isn't about like, hey, when things get to a certain place in the job, then I can catch my breath and finally focus on that. It really needs to be like a job requirement that we see for ourselves, because when we position it that way, then we will do it because we want to do a great job. And it's actually like a prerequisite to be able to be that effective.
I like writing that into job interviews and thinking about who we hire and how we hire, the conversations that we have up front about, look, I expect you to be amazing for our kids, and I expect you to model well-being for our kids and the people that you work with. That's an interesting conversation.
So good. Also, like, I hope
really, I'm just blessed. I don't know how any other school district works in this regard, because it's obviously my only one that I've gotten to work with a board like I do now. I'm blessed to have a board that will drive by my office and see my truck out front and say, "Go home."
And text you. I get yes. I've definitely been there. Mm-hmm.
And they care, and I can call and say, or I can text Carrie, our board president, and say, "Hey, I'm going to take the morning off to run and eat lunch with my kid in Waco. Are you cool with that?" Absolutely, every time. And so there's those. I think being transparent about the need for that, and sometimes you got to educate, because sometimes your board are 9 to 5 people, right? They work 9 to 5, and they are hard working people, but they have a different schedule than you have, And while they may be at an event for their child, or anyone be at an event for their child, they may not see that you are at 4 events that day alone, right? And so educating them that the job is not 9 to 5. It may be 6 to 4 this day. It may be 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. or midnight, or like I'll get home on Saturday at midnight from Thursday this week. It'll be Thursday to Saturday at midnight this week. We might assume that as leaders that people are seeing those hours, but remember, sometimes they're only seeing little glimpses of the day that we live. And so helping them understand that will help them understand when you've taken that morning to come in at 10 o'clock instead of 6 a.m. Or whatever that might look like, or, actually gone to pick up your dry cleaning, which I still haven't figured out in my schedule.
It took me like 4 weeks to get it there, and then another like week and a half to pick it back up. And I mean, our town is this big, y'all. I mean, how many times did I drive by it? But I just didn't have time between all the things. True. All right, speaking of time, I know you're about to hop to an amazing state track meet appearance. So let's wrap with, we always end with this type of question, which is, you shared so many practical ideas throughout the podcast, but we love to end with that practicality as well. So as we close out, share with us 1 to 2 actionable ideas that you would love to leave with our Rural Ed Leader listeners, something they can apply right now to improve their own rural leadership.
Oh, wow. 1 or 2. I'm going to give you the first words of advice that my dad, God rest his soul, gave me a long, long time ago. And it is a challenge for me. And I suspect, as we kind of mature into leadership roles, and we're in these roles, and we're expected to lead with our words, sometimes we forget to lead with our ears. And so his words way back then were, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them proportionally. And so I would say, and it's hard to do. It's hard to sit back in the high school team meeting while the principal is leading that, and not interrupt or interject, or when they look at you, you allow that storm to maybe happen for the principal so that they can learn through that. And so it would be that. It would be listen more than you speak, firstly. And then, second, I've already said show up, but I think it's worth repeating. Showing up will pay the biggest dividends that you can imagine. And then the last thing, we mentioned it a little bit a little while ago, but we've got to take care of ourselves. We've got to take care of our people. And if we don't have people that want to be led, then or that aren't prepared to lead, then because we're not preparing them, then we're not doing a very good job. And I'm just going to leave with a quote, and I'm sure that it's not his quote, but he just said it last night. Our high school basketball coach, Coach Jeffrey Head, he just had this historic run through the state semifinals. Being first time ever in school history. Coach Head is one of those long timers in Goldthwaite. And he said this to a group of Lions Club honorees at a banquet last night. He said, good leaders inspire people to follow them, and great leaders inspire people to lead others. And so I would say that continue to work on how we develop people to lead others as opposed to following us, I think is the best advice I can give. And shout out to Coach Head for reminding me about that.
Love that.
That's really cool. Well, Chris, we think a lot of you as a professional. I think as good a leader as you are, you're an even better person. So we appreciate you being with us today. And rural ed leaders from our small town to yours, your voice matters, your leadership matters, your kids matter. Thank you for being the leader your community needs. Thank you, everybody.